What's going on, everybody? It is the Willie Ashford from the Black Culture Podcast. I know you're ready to get into this interview, but before you do,
make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Apple, Google, and Spotify at the Black Culture Podcast. And
also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Black Culture Podcast.
Peace. We have Miss Yvonne Pointer. Want to delve into your story. It is a story that unfortunately I'm familiar with because a similar one happened about 5 years ago in the city with the DeFries family. And but there was one, and probably one of the reasons why I don't know yours as well is because it happened the year of my birth. So I'm going to give you 1984. And if you can, kind of, let's go back in time and take us back to that year. And we're going to take a journey all the way up into 2021 to get into the work you're doing now and the reason why you do it. The floor is yours.
Well, first, let me just say how honored I am to have the privilege to be here today. You know, out of all the people you could talk to, some kind of way, my name came up, and I am deeply grateful and humbled by that. On December 6, 1984, my 14-year-old daughter, Gloria Pointer, left home going to school. Let me even back up before that. Yes. Because I need to tell you that at the time I was a single mother. I was a straight A student, just wanted to be accepted and liked and cherished. And so I ended up getting pregnant. And at the time, you couldn't go to school pregnant back then. I know it's odd to believe, but back then you had to leave. And so I went from straight A's to a teenage mother. All of my dreams to go to college and just finish school just seemed to dissipate along the way because of this teenage pregnancy. And I remember making a commitment that I was going to make sure the traps that snared me did not get her as well. So I was one of those teenage mothers that was present, okay? Present throughout her life, that she would know that I was there for her. And so anything that happened in her school, I was just there. And I was trying to navigate her through a system that ensnared me, if that makes sense. I didn't want her to not make it to college. I didn't want her to not get married and have children. I wanted her to finish, like I passed the baton to her. Okay, this is what got me, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen to you. So on the morning of December 6, 1984, she was to receive a perfect attendance award in school, and the school called me to say that she had not made it to school. Now, needless to say, I was one of those mothers that every student despised because I was present in your school. I remember once she got in trouble and she told the teacher, whatever you do, don't call my mother. Okay, why? Because my mother is coming to the school. And she said, don't do it because you're going to embarrass me. That's why I'm coming, because I don't send you to school to behave a certain kind of way. And if you do anything other than, it's embarrassing to me. So when you see me walk through the door, understand that I am there for one purpose, and that's to embarrass you. So you won't do it again. I'm coming to embarrass you. So everybody at the school knew me. They knew her. They knew the way that I was about her. And so that morning, when they called her name to receive the award and she didn't come on stage, everybody knew something is not right, because she had a standard of attendance, a standard of presence. So when they called me to ask me where was she, I'm like, what do you mean, where's she? She's at school. No, she's not here. And within 10 minutes, the principal called back and he said these words, call the police. He didn't say she's cutting, she ran away. He said, call the police. And so we called the police, and within an hour, they were back at my home and they just said, sit down. And I said, sit down for what? And I remember them saying these words, we found a body. And it's interesting how it played out because I felt as if the floor reached up and grabbed me and pulled me down into it. And while I was in the fetal position, lying on the floor, I'm thinking to myself, why are you on the floor? They didn't say it was her. And I apologetically stood up and excused my behavior. And needless to say, it was her. She was found sexually assaulted and beaten to death very close to the school. I say all that to say that as we talk about this conversation and we talk about crime and violence, people don't realize that not only did they kill her, but they killed this dream that I had for her as well. You know, they killed the dream of college and prom and motherhood and wife. And so my crusade against violence is more than just you're murdering these people, but the ramification of the violence, the ripple effect is just, it's just indescribable. So when I finally was able to see her after 3 days of the homicide, I just said, I'll find out who did this, not realizing it was going to take as long as it did.
And that was the 29 years.
Mhm. It was 29 years before an arrest was made. And well, and it's not because, oh, one day, it's because it was a 29-year search, if you can comprehend that. You just, this is your purpose. I'm going to find this person. And every day when you get up, you're kind of focused on that. And it doesn't have to be morbid. What happened was it was service that did it, because in my search for the killer, I had to serve through the maze of life in the search. You understand, if you were searching for something you lost in your house right now, maybe you lost an ink pen that you really loved, or you lost $20. Well, you wouldn't just sit on the couch and say, I'm looking for my $20. I'm looking for an ink pen. You would literally get up and search. You might turn over something. You might look in something. And that's what happened in the 29 years. It was a lot of activity, a lot of movement in the search that eventually led to the person.
I was gonna ask you that because you hear a lot of people that lose loved ones or lose children. You know, they die and they say the cause was a broken heart, right?
Mhm.
Because losing their loved ones. So I just want to know, you know, of course, with prayer and faith, you can get through it. But what are some other steps you took to get through your everyday life to like not only manage getting through your life and getting through your everyday life and even trying to move on with your life? How did you manage to continue to have that because I'm sure you were working with the police, but you were doing your own search. How did you manage, like, as far as on your mental, to get through that to the point to where it didn't take you out? I could
Well,
just imagine how strong you are.
can I say, can I just be honest in this
Yes.
conversation that it did take me out? It's only God's grace and his mercy that sustained me. Because I can remember one night saying that it was enough. I'm going to write notes that it was enough. It's something about the midnight hour and trauma that it becomes reality when life goes silent. And it was during one of those silent episodes that reality was just all over me. I could hear the voice of innocent children. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I can hear the voice of innocent children crying in my head. And I'm going to read a poem from my book, if I may, Behind the Death of a Child. It says, Mommy, speak for me. Tell the world of the pain that I felt with the blow to my head as he left my body lying in the rain. Mommy, speak for me. Even though my body is not there, please find someone who will listen. There must be someone somewhere. Mommy, speak for me. Not just for me, myself, and I, for there are so many children like myself who want to know the reasons why. Mommy, speak for me. For was I bad? Did I deserve to die that way? Maybe you can get someone to tell you, Mommy, why children are being abused in the world on today. And Mommy, if they won't listen, don't hang your head in shame. Just always know that I love you, Mommy. And you did try just the same. So on the nights when reality was there and I literally would just cry to leave this place, it was during those times that my true strength came, and that was from a higher power. And I remember one night crying so hard, like I just want out of here. uh, I'm doing this work. People think, oh, I have it all together, but my mind won't be silenced from the cries of those children that's in those innocent graves. And I remember that particular night just saying to God, I don't want to be here and I don't have a reason to be here. I'm not talking suicide. I'm not talking jumping off the edge of the cliff, but I might tell you, if I could have found the edge of the world that night, I would have jumped off of it. But there is no edge to exit. There is no one. So I just kept saying, I don't have a reason to live. I want out of here. That's enough. And that still small voice said, then I will be your reason. And it was just like that transformation, that the reason that I would remain, the reason that I would be consistent is through service. So I can say that that was the day that service saved, that the acknowledgement, that the power of service to others can save your life. So when go back to your question, when you feel like, okay, I can't take it anymore, that's enough. You have to find something greater than yourself, a greater purpose, a greater calling. May I use, even as an example, as we do this interview in another part of the world, there is a condominium that collapsed. And all of these people went to bed one night and the building just fell down around them. So when we think we have it bad, you might really have it bad. Maybe your rent is due. Maybe your big toe hurts. I don't know what we consider bad in our personal lives. But the end result is it could be a building on top of you right now. So here's what you do. You have to find a greater than that can help you through at your times. Yeah. So on the days when you feel like giving up, you plug into something greater than, and you wrap your arms around it and hold on to it for dear life. Now, my greater than was 29 years. Well, it was the promise that I made to her. I said, I'll find out what happened. But why? Because that's what she meant to me. Because, we did this little video that's going around the world called My Mother Will Do It. And she was always volunteering me for something at school. Who can bring cookies? My mother will do it. Who will take the children? My mother will do it. So I can see even in her homicide that some of the changes that have occurred as a result of, I could just see her up there in heaven saying, my mother will do it.
First off, powerful poem. Um, I don't know where that's posted at, but we definitely want to let the whole world know about that. I
I
want
can give it to you. I have a book. This is a lot of the work that's being done in Ghana and around the world. It's through this purchase. I write all these books and I sell them, and then I build stuff in Africa. But it's called Behind the Death of a Child, and it's not online. People can reach out to me and get it because I
I want
self-publish. Okay.
we want it. Yeah, we definitely want that. And I wanted to go back because one of the things in our culture, unfortunately, the stigma of being a teenage mother. Now, um, the type of mom you were, that's how my mom is. She was very present. She was always there. Um, but you being a teenage single mother and you having decided to make that choice, look, I'm going to be very present in my child's life, and all the kids knew. What I want to know is what type of support did you have around you, even while you were raising her? Whether it was parents, relatives, friends, what type of support base did you have in order for you to be able to provide that kind of life that you had wanted to create for her?
Well, I'm a one of 10 children. I have 6 brothers and 3 sisters. So our family was a support base, number one. And number two, the community, well, three, the community as well as the church. See, you got to think back then, there was communities, the people next door watched out for your children. And then my sisters and my brothers. And I have a son, Spanky, and he said that when he grew up, he wanted to marry a girl that had a big family, so his children would have aunts and uncles. So our support base was our aunts, our uncles, our cousins, and where you had people that can bridge the gap. And of course, the church. Was very influential as well. But that's some of the things. You're not going to do this thing by yourself. If back then, if your children didn't have your sisters and your brothers rally, well, we still do that to make sure, but you must have a support base. If you can't find any communities in your churches or in your religious institutions, whatever that might be, then you build a support base. After Gloria's homicide, I started an organization called Positive Plus. It's a support group for women for such a point as this. You must build. If you don't have a support base, build one. You look out and find, oh, it's other mothers like myself, it's other fathers like myself, it's other teachers, it's other doctors. And you come together and say, what do you need? How can I help you? Here's what I need. Here's how you can help me.
So I'm glad you brought up community because that it sets up my next question. And I could imagine, like, you remind me of my aunt Sarah Pope. She used to take care of me, and she was
Hey, Aunt Sarah.
she was just like that. Like, if she showed up, you knew she wasn't showing up for no reason. It's because I did something I shouldn't have did. So you didn't want her to show up because if she did, she wasn't coming just to talk. So I can imagine kids like that stand out. It affects the people around them differently. Like, they stick out. They can't do certain things that other kids do. So I wanted to ask, how did her loss, how did that affect the community? How did that affect the people around you? Because I remember when I played mini league football, one of our players passed away with cancer, and that motivated us the next year to go out and win and make it to the championship for him. So how did that affect you and affect the community? Because I could just imagine if they knew you, she stood out. She wasn't just another kid in the neighborhood.
Well, that's an interesting thing because it had a positive and a negative effect. The uh, let's start with the negative. The children who loved her and she loved, their lives were impacted uh, in a negative way, especially the young man who was the last person to see her alive. He saw her with the person, and his mind said, go check to see if she's okay. But he didn't because he didn't want to be late for school. So, needless to say, when the word came back that she was murdered, that has sent him into a lifetime of I should have. So, that's the negative effect. But the positive effect is because her name still resonates in life today through scholarships, through establishments around the world in Africa and everything, people who never met her get to benefit from her existence. Yeah.
Wow. There, unfortunately, in this culture, and when I culture, I'm talking about America, there is a lot of that goes on that we don't even know about. I spoke of the DeFreeze family, and I think she got a lot of media attention because of who her family is. But you went on a mission, and that's where I want to get back into. When that happened back in 1984, and I don't know what the climate was back then. I know the 80s is when crack flooded our communities, and I'm sure people were doing all kind of stupid stuff. But you went on a mission. You said, I'm going to find my daughter's killer.
Yes.
So if you can take us back to those years where your mission started. And I know it took 29, which I'm 36. I was born in 84. So that was only 7 years ago that the killer was actually found, correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So can you take us on that long tumultuous journey?
Well, it's interesting that you were born in 84. So you see, death came and life came all in the same year. And this is one thing I would say to anybody: there is life after death. If you have people listening and they've experienced a traumatic situation, violence, or death, understand that there's still life. That was one of the issues that I had with the whole situation when she was murdered in the beginning, that life continued. I couldn't believe it. How can life keep going? How can the gas bill still be due? And how come, life goes on? Get that. So my journey to find her killer started the day at the funeral home when I said to her, I'll find out what happened. I'll find out who did this. And I just started by wanting to keep children safe. At that time, we had a radio station that did a program where we would go from school to school called Stranger Danger. We're going to tell children what to do if they are abducted. So it started out with just keeping the kids safe. And then it expanded into programs such as the Midnight Basketball League, because we started thinking, okay, we're talking to children who might be victimized, but what about the perpetrators? Who's working with them? And that's how we got into programs such as Midnight Basketball and going into the prisons. And then we started doing scholarships. So again, it was just a series of services to others that started.
Wow. Um, During that time, and Willie asked about support, and you're very well known throughout the community. What type of support in that effort did you get from everyone around you?
Well, what I found out about support, um, if a train is in motion, it is easy to hop on it and ride. So people saw that my train was in motion. So I got support from everywhere, from crack addicts to senators, because they said, oh my God, this is a movement. Something is happening. Excuse me. I probably should have brought some water in here. So I got support from the mayor, from the governor, from senators, from people in the community who didn't know Gloria, but felt the impact of her pain. As a matter of fact, I even got support from inmates in the prisons, because I would go into the prisons and I would share my stories. I'm going in looking for killers, looking for her killer, and found out that there's life even behind the bars. So now there's a relationship being built between me and unlikely characters, but they were supportive. So much so until when the day when her arrest came, they celebrated. Now here's people that's in prison for murder, but they're celebrating the arrest of Gloria Pointer. Yeah. So support is needed on all sides of life.
So I was going to ask you, so obviously you're doing this search, trying to find your daughter's killer. When you get, like, did you feel like when you got close, did you feel that? Did you have a moment where you felt like, I feel like I'm getting close, I feel like I'm right there? Like, did you feel that moment?
Well, actually, I did not. It came out of
Wow.
nowhere. And if I could tell you how it happened, uh, because I'm into service, again, you're just in motion and life is all around you. So what you're looking for in life is right there. And if you just keep moving, you're going to run smack dab into it. On the day that I found out, there was a situation in Cleveland with the Amanda Berry, Georgina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight. Well, I worked for the city of Cleveland community relations at that time. And a part of my job was to go to the scene of crimes and go to community situations that could be volatile. So they asked me to come to the hospital when these young ladies were rescued. And not only did they ask me to come to the hospital, Michelle Knight, we didn't know was in the house, and she had no one there to sit with her. So they asked me to come in and sit with Michelle Knight. So can you imagine? Here I am, my daughter's murdered, and here this little young lady is who doesn't have a mother. So I'm taking on that role. And she asked me for some cheesecake. Well, the FBI came in and whisked me away. But down in my heart, I promised this girl some cheesecake. I just want to get back to her to give it to her. A day passed, 2 days passed, and I'm calling everybody. Could you please help me to get to Michelle Knight so I can get her the cheesecake? So about a week goes by, maybe 5 days, and they call me and ask me if I could come to this location. And I was so excited. Do I stop and get the cheesecake? I'm getting ready to see Michelle Knight. And I'm running red lights almost to get there. And when I get to the room, there's the police and everybody. And I'm like, oh, where's Michelle? And they said, this is not about Michelle. This is about you. What about me? And they said, sit down. Where have I heard this before? So I go in and I sit down, and there's the detective on Gloria's case. And they said, we've made an arrest in your daughter's homicide. That's exactly how it happened. It was out of nowhere. And I'm busy trying to take care of Michelle. I'm nowhere on my radar. And so they asked me, they showed me the picture and asked me if I recognized the person. Well, I did not. And so to your point, I didn't have any inclination, but I was so busy just focusing on someone else until it happened.
Wow. It's amazing how things like that happen in life, isn't it?
Yes.
One of the stories, or I should say one of the interviews that I saw, and this is something that made me look in the mirror and something I think is missing in our society, is forgiveness. And
Mhm.
said that by the time the case came around, you had already forgiven the person who took your daughter from you and from this world. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because that is not, I can only imagine that that's not an easy thing to do. And in fact, it's probably one of the most difficult things you've ever done, is to forgive someone who took your child from you. And I wanted you to just share with us a little bit about how you were able to do that.
Well, unforgiveness is like a cancer in your soul. And you think, or we think, by holding on to unforgiveness, you're hurting that person. When in actuality, they are not impacted by what's destroying you. A perfect example is you got a divorce because your husband cheated on you, and you're so full of anger and rage, and you're mad at him, and then he remarries and goes on with his life. It's like, and you're sitting up there miserable, and so he's not impacted by your unforgiveness. So when I saw that spirit trying to attach itself to me, the one thing that I knew I needed to do was work on making sure it didn't latch on in my heart. So I would say, as I would walk down the street, before I even know, I said, I forgive you, whoever you are, I forgive you. And that was really not about him. It was about keeping me safe and open. And so when I came face to face with the person, it was no need to forgive him, because I already had done that before I knew who he was. So in the courtroom, at the victim's impact statement, I was able to say, I forgive you. And I do. It's not going to bring her back. Uh, okay. It's not going to bring her back, but it's just going to help me to live. You can't live with unforgiveness in your heart. It's impossible.
Yeah, and I know people who have, and it ate away at them.
Yes.
It's actually a journey I've been on, to forgive all the people that, and you know what? When you start to do that, because a lot of times we think everybody else is wrong, and I'm not discussing what you've been through. I'm talking about me. When I started to look in the mirror, I realized that I made some mistakes along the way, and I'm holding on to things that were just present in my own mind. But that's something that's really missing in our society, because we push people away. Because I one of my favorite rappers said this. He said, "I find out that not seeing eye to eye can be fixed with a heart to heart."
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, what about this? He is without sin cast the first stone.
Yeah.
So all the perfect people get a rock in your hand,
Exactly.
and you'll find out that, yeah. So I may not have committed murder or done any of the things, but I have some things that I'm not proud of and ashamed of. And I would want to think that that if necessary, that God would not hold it against me. And let me just say, those people who are struggling with forgiving someone, that's the role of God, right? To help you to do what you can't do for yourself. So if you just get honest and say, you know what, God, look, I'm about 2 seconds from catching a case. I'm about to go postal or ballistic on this person. I need you to help me to love. I had a dear friend who passed away that used to write for Essence Magazine, Dr. Gwendolyn Goldsby Grant. And she would say, anybody can love somebody that's loving them back. She said, you don't need God for that. You need God to help you to love the in your face enemy. So if you're having a problem with love, then you need God to help you with it. Does that mean I want the person to come to dinner on Sunday? No. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to entangle with these individuals. It just means that they have no place in your heart to spoil, to leave cancerous droppings, and that makes you free to live.
So I have two questions for you. I'm gonna ask one, then let you answer that, and then when we're done, I'll ask my other one. But my first one is you brought up Amanda Berry and Gina DeJesus. In that moment, like when you saw other young kids being abducted or being murdered, did that trigger you? Did that take you back to a place to where you went to where it happened when it happened to you? Because I can imagine seeing something happen to somebody that you can relate to. Like I know me, that would trigger me. Were those triggers for you when you saw stuff like that?
Well, I'm in constant uh, presence in that reality, so I don't get to leave from it. You understand? So it can't take me back because I'm always there. You talked about Damon DeFreeze, uh, uh, Stephen Halton. Whenever there's a homicide, I'm present in those people's lives.
I was there
So,
too with Stephen. I was playing drums at that church, unfortunately.
oh my
Crazy thing
goodness.
about it, I worked with him. He worked the same shift. I remember that
Well,
morning like it was yesterday.
I'm still working with his case. So I don't get to live a life and come back to it. I'm always present with that. So when Amanda and Georgina and all like that, it was just because I'm right here. And guess what? I would love to go and sit by the pool and have this wonderful life, this free from violence and free from pain. But that's not my calling. So yes, I'm just always present. It's like a scab that won't heal. I was just talking to Bishop Halton the other day. I'm always working on cases, always working on homicides. Um, I went to dinner recently with some friends in the media, and our whole conversation around the dinner table was about murders and homicides and autopsies. And I said, well, I would hate to have somebody sit in on these conversations and they would be like, do y'all talk about anything else? Unfortunately, no. Sometimes I do. I mean, like the Cavs, I know a little bit about the Browns or whatever. But most of my conversation are like, who murdered Stephen Halton? Daria Garth, uh, children who've been murdered. So yeah, even though I think that's probably why I'm a good go-to person to your question. When you get called on the scene, you have somebody there who can understand the pain.
Man, you are a strong
To
person.
God be
Like,
the glory. Mm-mm.
man,
I got my issues. Don't fool yourself.
you definitely are chosen by God to be where you are now. Because I don't know, definitely not me. I don't know too many people that could be in this position. But the second part of my question was like, and Alex, I hope I'm not jumping ahead, but if I am, you can pull me back with your next one. But like, what do you do now today to celebrate your daughter? Like what do you do? Like, what do you do today? Like now, like, what is your way of just when do you unwind? That's what I want, pretty much what I want to know. When do you sit back and just be able to just think? Because it seems like you're always going, you're always doing something.
Well, you got to remember, going back to the reason that I'm here. So this is my purpose and my reason, and I walk in it most of the time, all of the time. It's interesting that you say that because outside of this, I don't know who I would be. So I very seldom step outside of it. Sometimes when I step outside of it, like, oh, I find it doesn't fit. So it's like trying to squeeze into a size 9 shoe when you wear a 12. It's like, oh, this doesn't fit. So I travel. Um, I just took my granddaughter to Australia, New Zealand recently, and um, Italy. I mean, I like life. I like things that's beautiful. So I love books. I could travel in a book. I could sit on my couch and go around the world. do the pages of a book. So that's pretty much what I do. Um, Gloria was not only murdered, she was sexually assaulted and murdered. So for years, if somebody, before the case was solved, if they would say, would you like to go out to dinner? I saw them as the killer. So, because I didn't know who it was, right? So can you imagine sitting across the table and all my thoughts are, this person murdered her. So I needed to get the case solved so I can get that off me. But now that it's off me, you find that it's almost like a little baby learning how to walk. So many parts of my life, it's becoming new again. That was question number one.
It's interesting you say that because John going to try to frame this the right way. I'm not a parent yet. Willie is, and you obviously are, and a grandmother. Parents sort of have this myopic view of their children, and it happens to all of us when we want to plan out our life. And then, of course, when you're a parent, you want to plan out their life, and we only think about the good. We only think about the positive things, right? We know at some point they're gonna, a teeth is gonna fall out. They may break their arm or something like that. It's, if they play sports or whatnot. But we never prepare mentally and emotionally for something like this. My question is this: since you've had to come to that other side, a side that I would imagine every parent dreads, who would you say you have become? Because you said you don't know, outside of where you are now, who you would be, where you would fit in, but who would you say that you've become because you've had to go through this process and find a new strength in God? Who would you say that Yvonne Pointer has become since then, all the way up until now?
Can I say that she is becoming? She is yet to arrive. Some friends of mine a couple of years ago did a comic book, and in the comic book, they gave me a character called Mother Protector. It was so funny. So I think if I was to say who I have become, it would be a protector. It would be some people say, are you an angel? I said, no, I don't think I'm an angel, but I believe that I'm a servant of God here on earth. Who I am becoming is the total and complete version of myself. The one that can go out to dinner without looking at you like you're the killer. You understand? So we're evolving. So I know that I have become a greater person than I thought I would be had not this homicide occurred. When you look at the bio, sometimes when I go out to speak in there, reading this pages and pages of bios, who this person, Yvonne Pointer, is, and I listen to it myself, I'm like, oh my God, you just don't even know they're talking about you, all of the life accomplishments, all of the things. So I've become this phenomenon. That's a good word to put. I've become this phenomenon as a crusader for safety and for children. But I am becoming a person that has emerged from the trauma to develop into a whole person. Yeah, I'm unrecognizable even to myself at times, which is interesting because that's life. If you think you got life figured out, would you call me, please? Because I would like to ask you a few questions. The part of life, this journey it is so incredibly fascinating till every day is developing into something new and incredible and powerful. And then we got to give ourselves permission not to know. One of my adopted son's mom passed away. And I said to him what I would say to anybody: it is okay not to be okay. You don't have to be okay every day. Some days you don't get it right. But that's what grace and mercy comes into play. And I'm telling you, this morning in my prayer, I heard this word and it said, just try. Just try. So many people won't even try. So if you try and fall, if you try and fail, you have still won because you tried. So many people won't even try. You know, when I was a little girl, I used to read books about faraway places. This is the God's honest truth. And I was so incredibly fascinated with Alaska. I couldn't comprehend as a little child. What you mean the sun don't go down for 6 months? How does that work? What? So I wanted to see it for myself. And I would tell my little friends in the inner city, one day I'm going to go to Alaska and I'm going to see this 24-hour daylight. I just want to see this for myself. And they would all say the same thing. It's not going to ever happen. You're not going to ever go to Alaska. Why are you always talking about Alaska? And I brought into that, I let people convince me, well, due to pregnancy and through dropping out of school. But one day, by God's grace and mercy, I got to go. Yeah. And guess what? It was so incredibly beautiful. Here we are, 2 a.m. and the sun is up. So what is the moral of the story? Just don't ever stop trying. You just might make it to Alaska. Who's to say you will or you won't? But you definitely won't if you don't try.
It's so funny that you say all of that. Alex Price and myself, we actually last week we had a conversation. We talked about getting outside your bubble and not being afraid to fail. That's really what prevents us from doing things, is that failure. And I made a video and I said, failing in something doesn't make you a failure, but giving up and never trying it, that makes you a failure. And I feel like that's something I'm trying to put in my kids now. Even like I'm speaking life into them, telling them you can do anything you want to do. Don't ever think you can't do anything. And one thing I know is definitely in our culture, and again in America, what we do is our kids will say they want to do something, and it may sound outrageous to us. And I made a vow that no matter what my kids say, no matter how outrageous it seems, no matter how I don't think it makes sense, I will never tell them no, or I will never say you can't do that. Because just because it doesn't make sense to us, it doesn't mean it doesn't make sense to them. And I feel like that's where how we can kill a dream and kill thoughts and visions at a young age, just by the things we say back to our young people.
Well, and people say, well, aren't you afraid? You don't have any fear. I said, is you crazy? Every day I walk in fear. I just do it afraid. You know, if you're waiting on a perfect time.
Can you say that one more time?
If you're waiting on this perfect time, if you're working on this fear-free life, forget about it, because it's not going to happen. You have to do it afraid. Yeah. Are you afraid to go into death row and sit with the person who murdered your daughter, to pray with him, to sing with him? Absolutely, I'm afraid. But that doesn't prevent me from doing it. Are you afraid to get on a plane and fly to Alaska? Yes. Guess what? I'm afraid to fly. But I've been all over the world. Why? Because in order to get to those destinations, I have to get on a plane. So in order to do what you need to do to get it done, you might have to do it afraid. We have schools in Africa. I hope we talk about that in Gloria's name. And my mother would say, aren't you afraid to fly to Africa? I'm like, every time I get on the plane, I'm afraid. You're battling the thought. What if the plane crashes? What if you don't make it? What if you do this? Well, my brother Raymond helped me. You can die sitting right in your house. You don't have to go on an airplane to die. You understand? If something bad can happen standing on your front porch. A plane can fall out of the sky and hit you in the head. So uh, we can't avoid life by being afraid to live. So yeah, I'm afraid of intimate relationships. Oh, we can talk about that for a long time. Do you know how much fear it takes to say to someone, I do? Here's my heart. Squeeze it like a tomato if you choose to. Crush it like a rock if you know what I'm saying? Life is so many things to be afraid of. But you do it afraid.
Wow. I wanted to delve into your organizations because you do a lot of work, a lot of great work. And for the audience that might not know, I wanted you to talk about everything you have set up, from your schools in Africa to the cases that you work on, all of your organizations and the work that you do, which is a huge help, I'm sure, to those families and the people that you impact. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I would like to start first with the Gloria Pointer Scholarship that's at the local school, John Hay High School. Gloria wanted to go to John Hay more than anything. That was her dream. And of course, she died before she got to do it. So when I established the Gloria Pointer Scholarship at John Hay High School, it is for students who have been impacted by violence. The GPA doesn't matter. And we started that in 1991. And guess what? When I look back over my life and think, whoa, you have done a lot of stuff. That scholarship has sent, might be 29 kids now to college in her name. So we thank God for the Gloria Pointer Scholarship locally. So when people ask, why are you always doing things in Africa? They might not know that there's a scholarship here, but it's only at John Hay. Speaking of Africa, I have this prayer that I used to pray. I don't pray it anymore because it works. The Jabez prayer, when you ask God to enlarge your territory, give me more to do. See, you can't fool with that prayer because he's going to do it. So I was praying that prayer and I ended up getting a letter from a boy in Africa. And the letter went on to say that he was sorry to hear about the rape and murder of Gloria Pointer. What? How did this happen? Well, he found a piece of paper on the ground in Africa about Gloria's homicide in 2003. It was from a magazine that was written from Heart and Soul magazine in 1996. She was murdered in 84. This article was written in 1996, and he found it in 2003. So needless to say, he asked if we could help them by providing them with food and education. After we secured the fact that it was real, we started sending money for food and education. This goes on for 5 years. But during the process, the boy in Ghana had a dream. And in the dream, God told him to start an organization in memory of Gloria. So in Ghana, they began the Gloria Pointer Teen Movement. This goes on, as I said, for 5 years, and they invited me to come to Africa to see this work. You talk about fear. I don't even know how to get to Africa. I don't know what to do. But all God needs is your willingness. You don't need to know how to do it. I don't know how to do nothing. I'm just telling you. So I ended up flying to Ghana in 2008. And here are all of these children surrounding me, singing an anthem about Gloria. They've got t-shirts on. They're doing this work. And I just cried like a baby. Logan, would you bring me something to drink, please? I just cried like a baby. And I'm just mesmerized about the supercalifragilisticexpialidociousness of God. How did a piece of paper get on the ground in Ghana? And now here, all of this is going on. So I said, okay, God, what you want me to do? And he said, build schools. So how do you build a school in Ghana? Well, when we went back, that was 2013. When we went back, we broke ground for the first school. Now there's 4 there. We almost have a village. We've got orphans, and we've got orphans. Excuse me. And would you tell Logan to bring me something to drink? We've got orphans. We've got villages. We're getting ready to build a senior citizen home. We've got playgrounds. All of this happened because a boy found a piece of paper. Then we have the Positive Plus Women Support Group. Oh, thank you. Water. Thank you. So we've got all kind of things going on. I'm sorry, my throat just got a little dry. Excuse me. And the one thing about Ghana that is so incredible, I took 22 people with me the last time I went. And now you have people who are connected, and they now have brought into the vision.
Awesome.
I got it. Okay, so it's a question. The last question I love to ask before we close out, and I'm so excited to hear your answer based on everything you've encountered and everything you've overcome in your life. And the question is, if you could go back to a young Yvonne Pointer, knowing what you know now, what would be your message to her? If you could go back in time and give her any type of advice, any words of encouragement, and I can't wait to hear this answer, what would be your message and advice to her?
I would say to her to dream bigger than she's dreaming. I would say to her that what you imagine is bigger than that. So if you could some way take the limit off possibilities. You want to go to Alaska, little girl? Well, why not dream about going around the world? You want to be a teacher, little girl? Why don't you dream about being a professor? You want to be a basketball player, little boy? Why don't you dream about being LeBron James? So I would say to her to dream even bigger. Don't be afraid, and don't be confined by the color of your skin or your location. Don't let anything confine you. I say when I go into the prisons, one of my most favorite books in the world is written by Viktor Frankl. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And he was in the concentration camps in Germany. But he did this whole thing with his mind, that even though his body was confined, his mind was somewhere playing a piano in his living room. So one thing I would say to little Yvonne is don't let them confine your mind. Okay? Don't let them put your mind on lockdown. If you can dream it, then it's possible.
Yvonne, how can the people reach you? How can they get in contact with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and then we have the website, which is www.yvonnepointer.com. Or my email address is yvonnepointer@aol.com.
Incredible. We definitely got to do this again. So
Yeah, this is wonderful.
this
I want you all to know that there's many unsolved cases out there. We talked about Stephen Halton as one, but if people say something, say something. You would think that it doesn't make a difference, but it does. Families want to know. I have a case that's 50 years old, 50 years. And you would think, okay, people giving up. No. So you might be holding a name that would help somebody. So I want to throw out Stephen Halton again and again, that if you know something, say something.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Black Culture Podcast. If you haven't already,
be sure to smash that like button and also subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Apple, Google, and Spotify. And
also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Black Culture Podcast. Peace.